I was climbing at the Obed with my friends Wes and Benji a few years ago. We were wanting to on-site this climb called Barbwire and Lingerie. It's a beautiful climb in the Y12 area of the Obed. And it has two cruxes. The bottom one is about by the second bolt, and some small crimps. And then the higher one, close to the top of the climb, is kind of a sequential crux that can be difficult to figure out. So Wes went first, and he made it through the first crux and fell on the second one. He kind of went into it the wrong way. And I had a similar experience. And then it was Benji's turn. Well, I asked Benji, like, what's going through your mind right now? Like, what are you thinking about? And he said, well, I had these questions. He had questions around, will I be able to hold on to those small crimps by that lower crux where he needs to clip that second bolt? And he also had questions around, will I be able to clip the bolt? If I can't, will I fall and deck because it's so close to the ground? So his mind is creating these kinds of questions around important issues. But then he said something interesting. He said that he was anxious about being anxious on the climb. So like these questions made him imagine that he was going to be on his climb in that situation, anxious about not being able to deal with it and work through it. So this is really interesting aspect of mental training, is that the mind scares itself. Okay, we have like tangible fears, like fear of falling, for example, that come directly from the situation. You have a certain amount of climbing ability or falling experience, and the climb presents to you a certain amount of requirements around falling experience and climbing ability. So there's a contrast there, a real contrast between your skill level and the skill level that's going to be required on the climb. And so that contrast reveals certain fears, certain stressors that can create fears that you can work through. Like they're very tangible, you know that they're real. When the mind scares itself, it creates these questions that we need to pay attention to, but that they can't be answered without engaging the climb. And so I asked Benji, like, what are you going to do about this? And he said, well, some questions can't be answered. Some questions can't be answered. And what he meant is that you can't answer them just with more thinking. You need engagement. So I said, well, what are you going to do about it? He says, well, I'm going to engage. I'm going to take small steps, get in on the climb, and just take it a step at a time. And so an interesting thing comes of this, and that is that end results, like sending a climb, like being able to clip that bolt, they exist at some point in the future. In other words, you'll be able to send that climb or be able to clip that bolt once you work your way toward that future time when you're there. And that creates a lot of uncertainty. So if we're focusing on those end results, if we're focusing on the send, focusing on if we're going to be able to clip that bolt, something that we haven't done yet, then we're dwelling our attention on uncertain circumstances, uncertain situations. So what do you do about it? I talk a lot about the contrast between end result and process. You focus on the process. Okay? The processes are actions that you take right now in the present moment. Just like the breathing process. You inhale, exhale. It's an ongoing process that if you're focusing on it, it's something that is happening moment to moment in the present. Well, it's the same thing in climbing. There are certain processes that you do there, like moving, breathing, relaxing, proper engagement of your body posture, certain things that you need to be thinking about, how you make decisions, and how to fall if you fall. These are all processes too. So Benji said, this is what I'm going to do. You know, I'm going to answer these questions through engagement. Okay. So, yeah, it's interesting aspect of mental training that the mind scares itself. And a way, in a really important way that we work with that is this witness or observer ability that we have. To be able to step back, in other words, and notice what the mind is doing. What is the mind doing? And what it's usually doing is thinking. And here it's manifesting questions to kind of find a way to satiate its fears. So you need to be able to observe and witness that activity going on. And this points to something that we say repeatedly in this training. You know something when you experience it, not before. Not before. You need that engagement. And this is what Benji did. He engaged in small steps. He climbed up to that stance by the second bolt, held on to the crimp, focused on breathing, relaxing into that stance. And then he had a process for pulling the rope up and clipping it, which he was able to do. He climbed up to the second crux, went into that second crux, different than Wes and I did, and on-sighted the hardest route to date in his climbing career. So a shift in attention can have this kind of impact on your climbing ability. Really important quality. All right, that's the lesson. So you can go to warriorsway.com, read the full text and audio, check out our books and courses, and reach out to us if you want to investigate this way of doing mental training. We'd love to work with you. Thank you.